Good morning, Andy.
Hey, Andy. Good evening.
And we have recording. So welcome everyone to the May meetup. So normally we do, or what we've been trying to do is hold these on Wednesday nights, but the last couple of months we've just had some scheduling conflicts related to a particular organization having some last minute requirements for getting their people through certification. But I think hopefully next month onwards, I think that's past that deadline, so we should be able to go back to our regular Wednesdays. My name's Mark O'Shea. I'm sort of recognizing most of the names that are on here today, but we've also got Ben and Steve, and if you want to jump in.
Hello.
Hello. Also, I am not Stephen.
I am Steve.
Yeah. So fairly straightforward agenda today. Normally, so I guess, first of all, just anyone who's new and wants to do a quick introduction, feel free, once we get to that area. But in terms of what we'll focus on, we'll just go through a few of the new things in Intune that have finally gone into public preview or have just sort of appeared in the Endpoint Manager console this month, and then we'll switch into the topic or the topics, because this has got the potential to sort of go almost anywhere, which is lessons learned. So basically, every couple of years it's worthwhile taking a look back to see, what were the things you did right when maybe when you were migrating away from on-prem solutions for managing devices to moving to the cloud. So what are the things that that people have learned? What are the things you wish you had have learned sooner? If you're willing to share the same mistakes you keep making, but you're not learning from them, you're also more than welcome to jump in and talk about some of those. So then, just in terms of introductions, like anyone who's new who wants to jump in and just either like unmute yourself and do a quick intro. Alternatively, just drop a hello into the chat window, just so that we know that, just in case there's someone new, just to make sure that we're not ignoring you and acting a little bit too familiar with each other when we don't really know you.
Mark, Steve Redman here. Sorry, I've been away for a little bit, so I've been caught up in a few things of it, and I'm a senior manager in CBA, third-party cyber incident response.
Oh, okay. So
formerly at TAS.
Okay, so welcome back, because I recognize the name. Okay, it looks like it's a fairly shy bunch, or it's a returning guest. So that kind of makes it pretty easy. So let's just talk about some of the new Intune features, and I sort of just tried to focus mostly on Windows-focused ones this month, because that's more of the overall theme for some of the things that we'll be covering as we go through. But a few different things here, and I'll basically jump in and sort of show most of these, just so that you can, if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, you can take a look at what's there. And I think between all of us, we can probably sort of go through a few scenarios where they could be useful. In some cases, you might scratch your head a little bit going, isn't this just, reinventing the wheel, for example? So let's we'll just go through them over in the portal. I've done the smart thing of actually opening each of the things in its own tab, so that I don't forget. Oh, this is like expert level pro tip here.
Oh yeah.
Now this one here, device filters, is kind of it's an interesting one, because if we go through and take a look at what it's doing, I'll just call it filter 2, because I don't really know what I'm going to get it to do yet. Now, it's not just Windows, it does apply across other devices as well. But once we get into the rules, it's kind of like a mini, like a subset, or it doesn't give you as much capability as what you'd get with something like dynamic groups that then you could, dynamic device groups that then you could sort of use way more broadly. But here it's something where you could go through and I guess for me, like the main scenario that I thought of where something like this might come in handy is when it's, maybe you just don't want to keep creating additional groups, or you're getting pushback from the identity team, or maybe it's just something where you need to do a quick test of something to see if it works before you start pushing to get different types of dynamic groups, etc., created. But if you take a look here, so things like device name, etc., these some of these things are similar to what we'd be seeing over in dynamic groups, but we're not actually creating groups. We're just applying filters to existing groups. Okay, so I'm just looking to see who we've got there. We've got oh yeah, so Rio's up in far north Queensland. So how far north are you?
That far north. It's taking a while for the voice to come through.
Cairns. Okay. Yeah, that was latency.
Exactly.
Yeah. So with this one, it's like, I guess if I need to do like a quick and dirty approach of doing something here,
You just do it based on like Windows 10 version.
Yeah. So even like, what have we got, like OS version? So something like that, where if I wanted to test it out, I know that if I was doing it through a dynamic group, it's going to take a while for that dynamic group to get populated. So I'd constantly be going back to sort of go, is it populated? Is it populated? And it wouldn't be able to test until then. But this just seems like a way to, like, I guess there's like, obviously there's other usage cases, but I could see this being something pretty handy when you just want to do something, pretty quickly. Like we can still do, the usual things around having, basically multiple expressions in there. The operators are, is it the same as AAD, or is it? It looks.
It is, yeah. So we're interacting with the AAD objects when we're doing this sort of stuff.
Okay, so it is the actual same operator then. Yep.
Yep. So one thing to think about when you're sort of thinking about these things, filter is maybe not the right term for it. I mean, it is, but so think of filters as requirements. So you set your assignment groups sort of a lot more broadly than you normally would, and then you throw a filter on the top of that. So basically, the policy is going to go out to all of the devices or all of the user objects, and the first thing it's going to do is it's going to validate this filter when the device or the user object polls back to Intune. So the sort of the benefit of that is that your policies can be sort of shot out a lot more broadly. But the other one is that the devices are going to poll to Intune a lot more frequently than the dynamic groups are going to review their memberships, and that is by and far. Personally, I think that is one of the best reasons to be sort of playing around with filters.
Yeah. And Grok's also just sort of thrown in things like just being able to sort of do a query here to see that, like when you're assigning things to the user, making sure that if you want to assign it only to work devices versus their personal devices.
Yeah.
So I guess, So there's a few different use cases for it here. I guess it's just sort of seeing where it settles. But it's, I can already sort of think of a few things where it's going to stop me just creating random dynamic groups that I use once but forget to delete after I've stopped assigning things to them. So I can see this kind of being handy, quite handy for that. But even the idea, as you said, of sort of doing, going back to fewer overall policies, etc., that are being applied, and then doing, using this to start filtering. So a few different options where this could start coming in are pretty handy. So I'm just sort of watching the chat window to see what wisdom we are getting from Grok.
I am also moderating the chat for you, Mark. So
okay. Okay, so that's still so obviously it's preview. So look, that it's using the same syntax is such a nice thing.
Yeah.
So basically anyone who's already sort of been, handcrafting their own dynamic user or device rules, basically, skill set directly transfers across, and also not having to learn, all new operators as well that might be slight variations of the others.
So what we need to,
Scott.
yeah.
Okay, so Scott Duffy. So, have you seen? Didn't see that on when it must have been advertised on TV at some point, but there is a VB cologne or aftershave or something. So I'm thinking we need to start sending that as, I don't know if a thank you gift is the right word for that, but.
So what we need to do now, Quark, is we need to convince people that we need to be able to do filtering and dynamic groups based on the Intune object and on the AAD object. So we can filter based on slightly more data.
So Quoc, can you just tell them to make that happen?
Yeah, I'll let Scott know.
Sort it out.
Yeah, like any time next week is good to have it ready by.
I mean, there's still a full day in the week. I don't think I'm asking that much.
That's right. It's still only Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly.
2 full days in the US.
Yeah.
Oh, so then if we move on to item number 2, do you like my rule name, 28 0 days later? Because if I put 0 days later, I don't think people would have gotten the reference.
Yeah, no.
So I put 28 in front of it because it amused me. But if we just go through and create another one, then not too many options down here. So it's what do we want to expedite to? So really, this is one of the big things that was announced. I think it was announced, like they kind of hinted at it just prior to Ignite, but then they spoke about it in more detail at Ignite, and people have been frantically watching to see it start lighting up. But it just means we can go through and start targeting to get systems patched and up to date, and set a 24-hour or 48 or basically immediate or up to 2 days to restart without having to jump back into normally we'd be doing that in the ring settings where we might need to sort of adjust the the monthly or the quality update rollout. So this just means we can sort of push things out faster if we need to, and at least try to get better alignment of what's out there on the devices. So so this is something that a couple of months ago it was announced. Now, I guess the thing here is, I think if we just scroll back a bit, it's not telling us up there that it's preview, but if we kind of scroll back across here, you can see that again, it is a preview feature. But I guess this is something that I think is basically it's almost like an update now button in some way. So this is something that I can definitely see filling a few gaps in terms of the way that you could deal with some of these updates in the past. Now, just sort of looking at Eddie's comment, so this is for security updates, not for dodgy Office update remediation. No, like dodgy Office update remediation, you just roll back a version and you're good to go. And it may not even generate any network traffic if you've got a big enough DO store on your device. So I still think when DO works properly, it is magic. It's like, how did all these machines move back and forward so many times without there being any disk activity? Oh, I reserved 200 gig of space on each drive for DO. You think I'm joking? Oh, they get reset enough that it's not never going to get close to that. But so I guess just another random thing I want to show. That I'll just open this up in a final tab over here. I kind of laughed at it, but I want to say something that I said a couple of years ago when we get to that one. because it upset a few people the way I positioned it. So I want to talk about it a bit later. So yeah, so this just means that we can sort of pick the point in time that we actually want to go to in terms of those updates. And I guess this is where we really start seeing that, you know, the story around the cumulative monthly updates, where rather than going, oh, hang on, which of last month's patches do you have installed, or what patches over the last year do you have installed? This is where we can really start seeing that once we're in here, that we can really just see that it's like, no, you get this security update, or you get that, you know, basically we're saying you get your security updates up to that point in time. So I think that's actually, so I quite like that some of that, the story that was given a few years ago that people started to struggle with, because they were like, well, I want to individually choose the patches that I install. It's like, well, all of a sudden this is something that, you know, is starting to make it an easier conversation. It's like, no, we just, you know, apply the delta of whatever's needed to get those devices up to that cumulative update that's current. Now for the apps one, this one, if we just jump in, and this is a pretty simple one, but it's just sort of showing the version number of Win32 apps in here. So you can see here that this tenant, I don't really have too many floating around in here, but just so that you can see the version. Now, I guess the challenge that I've got with seeing it this way, it's good to see it that way if you don't have hundreds of apps listed in here and you're trying to sort of make sure you've got the right versions. But it's for things like this, part of me thinks that maybe in the name of the app that you're pushing in, maybe putting the date in there if you want a visual clue. Now, I don't know if date model is like
there it is. It's date created
actually
and last modified.
Okay, so last modified would actually be the better one. Yeah. So I actually think that last modified would actually be, if someone knows what they're looking for specifically, version is probably going to be a good option. But if you're going, hang on, how long has it been since I've done any maintenance in here? Last modified does a much better job of telling you that. And it's not as if you couldn't extract or get this information anyway. It's just trying to sort of, you know, address some of the concerns that people have, you know, people are sort of, you know, still saying, look, the endpoint manager console needs these additional, you know, not necessarily reporting capabilities, but just more flexibility in terms of the columns, etc. But even here, you can see that, you know, I can sort on name, and I guess it's good that I can sort on last modified, but yeah, we're slowly but surely starting to see some of those enhancements come through there. So that one's a pretty easy one. Now with locate device, so now we have a new remote action lighting up in here, locate device, and I'll just pretend that it's telling the truth here. I am I'm not there, but let's just pretend that I'm wherever that is. My guess is that it's probably a McDonald's. So just assume I'm in there eating some delicious fries.
I think
hang on, that's your office.
The Microsoft office.
That's your office.
Yeah.
Why
that's one Martin Place.
Why on earth does it think my computer is there? What are you doing, Steve?
Well, wouldn't you like to know?
Nothing you need to know.
I guess it's better than it sort of being somewhere in the middle of a harbour. Like it's not that. It's like in terms of the number of kilometers off that it is versus how big the planet is. It's pretty close guess.
Mm.
That is, I didn't realize when I saw it earlier. I was thinking, where the hell is it? But now that I'm looking, as soon as I saw the hotel name or the general PO post office, it's like, oh, okay, I know exactly where that is. Okay, and I can confirm that there is no McDonald's in there, unfortunately. But there's probably 200 of them around it. Now, the other thing, so I think the next one I just want to talk about here is just over in endpoint security under the AV side. If you go now into security experience, one of the things they've started lighting up in here is, I guess this is also something that starts tying into what we were talking about, or what what Steve was talking about in Ben's absence last month, no pressure or anything, is basically now we've got the option of not configured and yes and no as answered. So you could sort of see, just to highlight that to remind me what I'm supposed to talk about, I basically just randomly, or not randomly, it's in the same order. No, not configured, yes, no. So basically, yeah, so basically getting to the point where it's closer to what we were talking about last month with settings catalog. So, and again, addressing some of the concerns about things such as, well, what happens when I remove, if I change it from enable to not configured, but enable, could be, somehow tattooing the system in some way. So, so just again, steps in the right direction around, I guess things that people, have been used to with group policy, et cetera, over the years, being able to, start getting, I don't want to say the same functionality, but being able to meet some of those expectations. Now, the bonus thing that I didn't list in here, I saw this at 5 in the morning today while showing it, and I thought it was pretty funny. But let's just go into config.office.com and look at this. You can download the long-term servicing channel of Pro Plus 2021.
Okay.
Now, if it's anything like the 2019 release, it's guaranteed to be an incredibly underwhelming version of Office for anyone who's using a subscription version. Like, that's a selling point of the subscription versions, is that this is going to be incredibly underwhelming because you've probably had at least half the features for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But it's there, but thinking about it though, for people who do still need to go down that path or whatever, I think this is actually a nice way to get people to get exposed to the preview version, because it means that they've got to start learning how to use ODT, the configuration XML files, etc., to really start doing anything with it if they're not using config manager. So as much as I'm ridiculing it, I like the way they're doing it. Like, I hope to never have to see it installed on a device in my lifetime, but it's there. It's an option. I'll install it onto all of those Win 10 long-term servicing devices I'd never see. A match made in heaven. So that's really the majority, or pretty much everything, plus the bonus demo of the things that I wanted to talk about, just in terms of some of the new Intune pieces that have basically started lighting up. Either maybe some of these things were available programmatically previously, but some of them finally starting to show up in an easy to consume form in the admin center as well. So with that, I guess, is there, like, in terms of other features, etc., that not necessarily just with Intune, but if there's anything else that's that lit up in Azure AD, etc., over the last month that anyone else is sort of particularly excited about. Now, I'm thinking with Azure AD, we can probably do a bit more of a what's new with Azure AD next month, because we were talking about some of the changes to conditional access. There have been some tenant level options that if you hadn't opted into certain things, that they'll be enabled by default, etc. So it's probably worth taking a look at some of those things next month as well. Oh yeah, and good old OneDrive for Business. Some of the reporting capabilities coming through from there, but otherwise, this month I thought we'd sort of keep it fairly focused, rather than trying to sort of cover too many things, just so that it leaves us a lot of time to go through the next topic. Now, so in this case, it's lessons learned, and I basically built this out so that we can do it as a bit of a choose your own adventure. So I decided I'm going to finally use the Zoom feature in PowerPoint. So basically, we can click on any of these and jump into that section. So we don't have to do them in order. We don't have to do all of them if you don't need. But what I thought we'd sort of just do during this session, and probably the reason that at least a few of you joined today, is just to sort of hear other people's feedback around some of the things that went well, some of the things that went really well, mistakes that were made that hopefully you're not repeating over time when it comes to, not necessarily abandoning all of the things that you've done previously, but when you have been moving workloads across, what are some of the things that that you've had good experiences with, things that you wish somebody had have told you sooner? Now, I'm pretty sure, not just with Intune, but across the Azure AD, etc. If anyone says, like, I'm really surprised that a new feature has existed for 6 months or more, and I had no idea it was even a thing. This is something where there's always opportunity for you to sort of learn something that you would have liked to have seen, not realizing that it has been available for a while in some form. So I guess just to sort of throw it over to everyone, just either unmute or drop it into the chat window. What do you want to start off with? What are kind of the hot and burning topics for you?
Go for it, Nathan.
I don't know if this is related or not, but I guess the only thing that I worked out the other day that I somehow managed to pick the only Azure machine that doesn't have temporary storage, and now I can't change the size of the Azure machine.
So it's locked into a particular family.
Well, it's not even that. So I'm on a D2, I think it's D2 V4, I think, like that. But it has, we chose 0 gigabytes of the temporary storage, and then it when you try to change to anything else, it doesn't matter what you try to change to, it says you can't change from something that has no temporary storage to something that has temporary storage. So
okay, just capture the VHD and attach it to a VM that meets the size.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's if for whatever reason it's not letting you do it, that would just be I guess there'd be a few options, but that would be probably one of the easier ways.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I managed to pick the only VM size that has 0 temporary storage. Well, not the only one, but the rest of them all have 16 processors or some shit. So, yeah.
So basically, what you're telling us is don't take advice from you, or don't we won't let you make important choices for us.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, so which option now? And I guess the other thing here is that these aren't all, there's most of these have probably got some degree of overlap with each other as well. So anyone, just pick a number between 1 and 5.
3.
3. Update management. Dun dun dun. Did you like that?
It was very good. You did well.
The zoom feature zoomed.
Hang on. Is that 2003 WSUS server?
Oh, I did Google image searches. There were some that were so bad that it's like, oh no, I'll put ones in that are a little bit bad. I won't put in ones that are completely horrendous.
Come on,
but basically, I was trying to emphasize that, with WSUS, that it's like, I wanted to sort of give people an idea that it's something that's been around for a while. And if you take a look at what the patches are that are on it, XP, SQL 2000, IE, so this is quality stuff right here.
Oh yeah. No, definitely being deployed in 2006.
Should have selected that group policy one so you could see the image on that.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that one.
All right, very good.
I was very proud of that one. Okay, so I guess then, in terms of the update management piece, probably let's sort of talk about what are the blockers. So there are things that I would still say are legitimate blockers in some cases to keep WSUS on-prem, but it really would be, okay, how much server, is there a lot of server infrastructure that you need if you really, for older OSs, getting that, more fine-grained control over approvals, etc. But this was something that, moving to 10, how many of you did do a fairly rapid move? So when you went to Win 10, how many of you kind of went to Win 10 and just embraced Windows Update for Business pretty much as part of the same process?
There's update services that aren't Windows Update for Business.
No, I've never heard of them.
No.
I haven't.
Steve, I got one word for you: air-gapped server management.
I hate to break it to you there, Ben. That's 3 words.
One word.
Yeah, no. All the customers I've dealt with, when we go Intune, we go Windows Update for Business.
Yeah.
That is even before I was at Microsoft. It was just easier.
Yeah.
Management and maintenance.
Set and forget.
I'd be interested to know the use case for customers that have gone Windows 10 with Intune that haven't done Windows Update for Business. I know they exist, but I'd be interested to know. The other thing about server management is make sure you have a look at the Azure Update solution. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It will change your life and it will make everything happy for you.
I set that up in less than 5 minutes on a coffee break with a guy guiding me through on Teams. It was the easiest thing, and now like all of my lab servers just get updated, and I never need to think about it ever again.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no excuse to be manually doing this stuff.
Yeah, and
Except
even
for the cost associated with doing Azure Update,
Exactly.
because it's not free.
Sure.
what would you be talking, like cents per month for each VM?
No, it's actually a license association that you need to have. I don't know the details. I didn't have to go down to that level, but it's not free.
Oh, is this the new update management one, or just using?
It's just Azure Automation and the
yeah.
It's been around for at least 3 years.
Yeah. Because the issue that I always used to hit with it was or not really an issue, but you couldn't create. So I'd be deploying everything in Australia East, but the automation account needed to be in Southeast for some reason. I think it was just.
Yeah, I don't think that's a limitation anymore.
Yeah, no. So that they've addressed it. I think it was just one of those point in time things where, like, I think where the compute infrastructure in Sydney was, generally much higher, more utilization. So I think that was just one of their ways of, doing a bit of balancing of resource utilization across the regions.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yes,
Fox put a link in the chat around the Azure Automation Update Manager. That's what we're talking about when we say the Azure Automate Update for Windows servers. And it's not just for Azure servers. I want to stress that. It actually works with on-prem servers as well.
So with the on-prem servers, you basically it's exactly the same as doing any kind of runbook process. So you install a connector that just links.
Microsoft Monitoring Agent. So it's the SCOM agent that's now OMS that's being used for everything now.
It's got a whole bunch of acronyms, but it just basically keys it into your automation account so that you can trigger workloads on it, and that's how the updates happen. I can't get over how easy it was.
Yeah.
Yep. And if it doesn't work, you get told why it's not working, and then you can go and triage and remediate.
Yep.
So that's probably the big one to call out is, rather than having to connect to every one of your servers, make sure it's installed, or even going and seeing to double check because you don't trust the reports that you're getting out of your WSUS or config manager infrastructure. This will tell you it failed for this reason, and you can go and work through the remediation processes. So you're doing triage and troubleshooting on exception rather than sitting there and having to do everything else.
So
Andy,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess then let's just cover off then the scenario that's probably not the one we normally talk about. What are some additional reasons, like let's say things that you might still view as legitimate reasons for someone to be using WSUS on in a mostly Win 10 environment that maybe they've got a couple of servers.
I have a good example that's very front of mind for everybody. It would be the computers that are managing a pipeline and government infrastructure that you don't want having access to the internet. While you could use WFB for things like that, there's advantages of having WSUS to manage those sorts of components.
Yeah. So I mean, I was joking before, but arguably there are scenarios where, you know, having air-gapped networks and stuff is important, and you can't get around that. The other scenario is just absolutely terrible internet connectivity.
Yep.
You know, I'm now in the lucky few that has decent internet, so I've immediately forgotten that other people don't have good internet, especially certain businesses in sort of remote locations. So it's all well and good for us to say, oh, just get everything down, you know, off the cloud. But if your bandwidth is not there, then you know it gets difficult.
Yeah. Download once, deploy many.
Yeah, exactly. And the other
and you
scenario,
know, and you're not counting on, you know, DO as you're hoping that your connected cache has still got it, that it hasn't reset itself because you filled it, or that other client devices have been left online and they happen to have the updates you need and they happen to make them available when you ask for them.
Exactly.
There's a lot of maybes with DO.
Yeah, and so have another sort of a hypothetical scenario here, Mark. Imagine, say, for example, there was a pandemic that happened and all of a sudden everyone had to work remotely. Delivery optimization doesn't really work when no one's in the office.
No.
So this is something that I've spoken quite, sort of I'm very opinionated about it. Everyone getting all excited about delivery optimization. Most people are working remotely at the moment, and that sort of brings further strain on that expectation of reliable bandwidth. Especially if you've got a forced VPN that isn't split tunnel or, you know, something like that. It could just cause all sorts of problems with that. So, you know, that's another scenario that even having on-prem updating infrastructure is not going to fix that, like by any stretch of the means. But it is something that people need to think about, that, you know, pushing all this stuff down, pushing out required applications, updates, and all that sort of stuff, it's going to severely impact people that don't have decent internet connections.
And even now, if you sort of think about if the number of people, like people working from home, there's probably going to be at least one other family member in the house, or potentially more at the same time. If you've got a couple of people, you know, streaming something to TV or their tablets or whatever, that you basically have to start, like, to give a good experience to your employees, you'd really have to start throttling everything to make sure that everything really just was a trickle download. Like, you could not make the assumption it was safe for you to gobble up, you know, to let bits or whatever technology you're using to gobble up all that bandwidth.
Completely. And then conversely, the problem with setting it up so restrictively like that is that if you're then provisioning devices through autopilot, they're probably going to time out. So, you know, it's a very interesting sort of balancing act that you've got to get right. And, you know, there's not a, to use my favorite question that I keep getting asked, there is no best practice for this. You need to understand what your end users' experience and sort of bandwidth requirements are, and sort of, you know, fine tune that balance for you for each scenario. Or set up custom dynamic groups. And, you know, once autopilot is completed, move them over to a more restricted bandwidth throttling.
Yeah. You can almost see where that, like, I know that part of you is, it feels like part of you is not, there's a joke element in there to it, but it's also a pretty serious option that some orgs will have to take up.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's like, everything's a joke to me, but it's also very serious.
Yeah.
It's just something people need to think about. You can't throttle it too much, otherwise autopilot's going to fall over. But you can't let it go ham because people's internet connections aren't going to allow it to work.
Nathan, go away. Stop taunting me.
That's cool. Can you pay for my internet as well? I got a gig down, but it's only 50 meg up.
Okay, so then anything else that anyone wants to sort of throw in there on just on update management in general? So
Make sure you do it.
Yeah.
Install updates.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm going to ask a couple of, well, actually one main question. In your any of you who are responsible for setting the quality update deferral period, what is the standard time frame you'd be using, let's say, for your mainstream group? So how many days are you? Are you thinking, or how many days have you stuck to? I'll assume that people aren't using 0 days and people aren't using 30 days. So it's going to be somewhere in between.
What we are doing with our customers is 0 for the first 3 rings, and then say it's 10% of the organization, and then 3 days for the rest. So for the other 90%.
So and that's sort of also kind of aligning to a degree with what Eddie's saying, where if someone's on insider rings or pilots or previews, it's like, no, you get it first. I want you to get it as quickly as possible. But once you start getting into the mainstream / production, etc. rings, then that's where it'd be nice to sort of say, let's get it below 10 or below 7 or whatever. But if it's an org that you've had trouble getting it below 30 days in the past, I guess any progress is good progress there.
Yep.
I just put a link to the thing that came out the end of last month. So it's they've opened up the Windows Updates API, I believe, into Graph, which is just, it's going to give you more control and granularity around deploying those 0 days. Since I put a bit of a troll post a while ago on the internet, on Twitter, and a whole bunch of people were saying, that they're not using Intune or sort of modern management because they can't handle 0 day updating, which is just patently incorrect. It's been a thing for a while, but we've now got even more control over how we sort of handle those updates as well using this API.
Yeah, and so then the other thing as well with update management that is not in public preview yet, but it is in private preview, is the driver and firmware management piece. But I think this was the thing that I was thinking, that I wasn't quite sure how much I'm allowed to say about this via under NDA, but I think we're allowed to talk about it exists, but we're not allowed to talk about what's involved if you want to pilot it, if you want to go into the private preview / self-hosts kind of capabilities. It's not something where you just say, yes, sign me up. You have to do some work on it. But I guess the being able to control the firmware updates, etc., that go out, I guess that would also be a reason why, or just drivers in general might be a reason why people want to get some driver updates, but not necessarily all of them. And Windows Update for Business is give me drivers, or don't give me drivers. You don't really get any real choice there. But so that's something that hopefully within a few months we and that's not based on any real information. I'll just assume that we'll probably see at least more information, hopefully a public preview in a few months.
Sweet.
And if anyone does want more info on that, I think I'm pretty sure they did a session. Well, see, this is coming back to that confusion I was talking about with online events. You forget what online events you heard something at, so you don't know what you're allowed to talk about. So if it was a public session, it would have been an Ignite session. So check the Ignite catalog to see if there's anything around driver updates or firmware updates through Windows Update for Business. Oh, good. So yeah, so thank you, Kwok. So I didn't violate NDA. No, I definitely did not cover the NDA pieces, thankfully, because I remembered explicitly what they were, but because I've seen a few different sessions on it, I was hoping one of them was public. Okay, let's go back to the top the presentation. I think, have we covered everything we need to around updates? I can see Andy's typing. I just want to make sure that if he's got anything related to this, that we just keep on this slide for a second.
If 0-day updates aren't expedited, then the deferral period. Are you suggesting there, Andy, that if you don't specifically push out 0 days, then they'll just go through your normal update cycles?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. If you don't have a policy set up to deploy, as soon as they come out, then they'll come out. If it's a critical, Steve, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that, I mean, you probably should have a 0-day deployment for criticals.
Sure.
Yes. So this is where you can use the new feature to force that through, but criticals will come down rapidly.
Yeah.
So they ignore the deferral periods, or would it still be applied for 7 days?
It
for instance?
still applies it for the time being, but if you the new feature that's coming in where you can force it, then it will change that process.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Oh, we finally got Phil chiming in. Hello, Phil. I'll wait and see what Phil's typing before I.
No, just get him.
Expressing my bandwidth envy on Nathan. I've got 1,000th of his upload speed.
and you live like 30 kilometers out of the city at most, or something like that, Phil?
Yeah.
If I won't say where you live, I think
Beecroft.
Yeah. I was going to say it's the place is buzzing. I don't know why I was storing that bit of information in my head. I don't think I've ever physically stalked you. only.
So that implies you maybe virtually did.
Yes. Maybe.
Not willing to admit.
Yeah.
Google Maps is a great tool. That's all we're saying.
Intune find this device.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we jump into next?
There were some numbers up here earlier.
1.
Oh, we've got a
3
1.
or 5.
I will say
So
goodbye,
3.
Mark. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Phil, thanks for jumping in.
Thank you. I'm off on a holiday, mountain biking, so I need to go pack.
Go.
That's fun.
Cheers, guys. Love it as always. Bye.
Right. Okay, so did we have a 5 earlier? Okay, so I think then we've got. Okay, so we'll do 5 and then we'll do 1. I think.
Sure.
Okay, so scripting. So I guess just here in terms of scripting, like this kind of covers a variety of things, but as a starting point, let's use login scripts, etc., as kind of as a starting point, because they're still things that people are looking at, going, okay, how do we get either move our login scripts over to something cloud-based, or at least try to replicate the capabilities that login script was giving us. And we know that in a lot of cases, that some scripting option is probably still going to be required, as opposed to, you going, well, how do I do these things in Intune? It's probably not necessarily something that the Intune team, would be exposing, because they'd be going, why are you doing these things? Even though you've probably got good reason to. So who wants to kick this one off?
I've spoken about this a fair bit over the last couple of years. I guess I can speak to some of the experiences that I've seen. So one of the first things that happen during a sort of a migration from existing management to modern cloud management is that the question about, well, how do we get access to our on-premise file servers and drive mappings? That conversation always appears. So if you're moving to a full zero trust scenario, then you don't have inherent ability to identify, what security group access users have in Active Directory, all that sort of fun stuff. So there are troubles that need to be, or issues that need to be resolved through scripts and stuff like that to get those drive mappings done. I've spoken about it many times that one of the best ways to do this is to utilize the sort of the Power Platform. Things like Azure Functions are fantastic for this. You can create a middleware solution that'll just handle the queries for security group memberships and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, realistically, everyone's supposed to not be using drive mappings, and everyone's supposed to be leveraging and drinking the Kool-Aid that is SharePoint. But until they migrate to that, drive mapping is a thing that is going to stick around for a very long time.
Yeah, and especially there'll be some verticals where, like, drive mappings are not, local, like high-speed local networks with high-speed attached, whether it's a NAS box, whether it's a Windows server box or whatever. I can't see those things going away for a whole bunch of different types of organizations.
Yeah, for sure. I think really it's just more around the idea that anyone that did spend any time working on let's call it old school, a legacy management platform, primarily around on-prem AD and all that sort of stuff. We got quite accustomed to just simply being able to natively query AD through LDAP. Not having that was sort of a big kick in the pants for quite a few people. Just like, how do I know what I am allowed to get access to? That was one of the biggest hurdles to overcome when I was sort of working on this. When the solutions that I've deployed many times over.
The other thing to call out around drive mappings, the next conversation is, how do I access my file servers without getting prompted for a username and password when I'm using facial recognition?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest solution is don't use Windows Hello for Business. The second solution is to use hybrid key trust. And then Steve can talk about how easy it is, and then I can explain that it's not as easy as Steve's telling everyone.
Oh, no, I'm not going to say it's easy, but I'm still suggesting that people should look at it as an option.
Yeah, for sure.
For their environment, because it allows for that great customer experience, and then stepping through and configuring hybrid key trust. Yes, it's certificates, it's scary, but once you get it all set up, it's set and forget for the most part, until your certificates start to expire, and then you need to go and update them.
But of course, they're all you're using Key Vault, and it's reminding you that they're about to expire as well.
Of course.
Totally. That's where we put all of our root certificates.
Yeah.
I think one of the more fun ones that I haven't had to deal with in a very long time, but getting all of this stuff, deploying the root certs and the intermediary certs and all that sort of stuff out is all well and good. A year down the track when they expire, and the management of the infrastructure has still not been handed over internally to the teams, like 110% of the way. And they don't know why it doesn't work, and then you've got to remind them that the certs have expired and you need to export them and upload them. It might You know, it could potentially be a really good thing to have that sort of native automate or, you know, alerting within Intune, especially around those root cert policies. You know, like if you upload a certificate, it's clearly got expiration details on it. There should be some kind of thing like, you know, when I enroll like a Let's Encrypt certificate, I get emails advising me that, you know, that's about to expire and I completely missed them and it expires, but at least I'm getting an email about it.
I guess at least like on the Intune side, it will. Actually, no, it's Apple that sends you. Is it Apple that sends you the warnings when
Yes.
your certs? Yeah, it's on Intune that warns you that.
And there's a reason why Apple needs to do that.
Yes.
Because if you let that certificate expire, you have to physically touch every single device again. Whereas all of the other certificates, you can reissue them out after they've expired without any problems. But that push notification certificate, if you let that expire from Apple,
you got
are in a world of hurt and your end users are going to hate you.
I mean, it's a good thing that no one uses Apple devices, right? So that's fine.
Yeah, it's only 60% of the world.
So Steve and Quoc. Oh, Phil's left, so I can't ask him. I've been seeing some interesting feedback from people about Azure Defender. Oh, sorry, not Azure Defender. Defender for Endpoint on iOS devices, and Microsoft employees not being particularly happy in some cases about their personal devices being forced through a VPN moving forward.
Hey, so have I. I just didn't know what it was talking about.
Yeah, that's what they. Yeah, that's basically they're going. Oh, so hang on. If I've enrolled my personal device into my company's MDM solution, IT gets to dictate what gets pushed onto that device, and it's like, yes, that's what device management really is.
Yeah.
But here's the flip side of it, though. Oh, there's something that actually kind of bad has happened to a few people, because Authenticator was pushed out as an app, and people were using it. If people weren't synchronizing it with a Microsoft account to be able to back things up, when they unenrolled their device, Authenticator got yanked for them from the device, and they lost secrets.
Yeah,
I know I shouldn't laugh at that, but it didn't happen to me. So it's the kind of thing that I could imagine would happen to me. But no. So if you're using Authenticator, make sure you add a Microsoft account and tell it to back up to that Microsoft account. And yes, I know we're violating all the things that we normally say about don't mix and match work, Microsoft accounts and Azure AD accounts, but right now we don't get a choice.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would say around that though, Mark, is yes, Defender does that VPN, but if you're using Android for work, it's only in the work profile.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So and that's the way that I sort of mentioned it to someone. It's more a matter of like, your work, like Apple not giving an option. So basically just sticking to more of the, the type of MDM approach that Google is trying to phase out, is pretty much. So it's kind of funny how things have turned around from one to the other, being delivering the better solution.
Yes. So for me, look, I run all of my work stuff in work profile on Android. It has Defender ATP. It's fantastic. Works really well.
So the thing that I noticed though, like if I enable it, is my throughput goes to crap.
Yes.
Really?
I was like I've got like full 5G reception. Why am I only getting this? It's like, oh, let me turn that off. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cutting it down to about 1/10 of the speed.
Ooh.
Yeah. Not that I really need to do much on the phone, but it's kind of like, I need to just remember that if I do need to pair to it to do a big download quickly, that's something that I've got to basically yank off the device first. Okay, so anything else then on scripting?
Happy to answer any questions if anyone's got any.
So Ben, on this slide, I deliberately opened up PowerShell command prompt in Azure and
That's
left it
good.
on command prompt for you. That was
Yeah.
specific for you.
Oh, nice.
I wanted
appreciate
I wanted to get you excited, but then go.
But then set
why?
me down. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
What you should have done is you should have left a command to like launch a VB script in the command prompt. Yeah, that would have been lovely.
I don't know if I've got it. I could probably find some batch files somewhere.
Yeah, you can write a hello world one right now.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back again. And I think the next, so that was
We're gonna
5,
do
I think
1. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's
So
just
group-
for Steve.
Group policy migration. Now, notice the amazing piece of artwork I searched for and found, which is basically group policy management via an XP client. So I hope you appreciate the quality of the images I deliberately sought out today. And it was not hard to find them.
No.
Okay, so what are the I guess the questions and or issues that people are still facing with group policy? And those of you who have previously hit roadblocks, what were some of the things that allowed you to just either bypass them or move forward while still getting the results that you needed?
I'll be honest, the easiest thing that I ever have done with group policy when going
Set
to modern,
fire to it.
Yeah.
burn the boat,
Yeah.
ignore it, come and tell me what doesn't work and we'll make it work for you.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of people that are sort of dictated to assume that if group policy is there, it's there for a reason. They didn't set it up. The person who set it up was 20 years ago, has probably left the company. Everyone's too scared to sort of change or modify anything, so they just go, we can't get rid of it. And you can play the why game until there's no answer, basically. So, they say they can't get rid of it, and you say why, and they go, well, there's policies, and you're like, why? Like, what are each of the policies? We can review each one if you want, and as soon as I find one that conflicts with another one, I'm gonna say, let's get rid of it all and start fresh. But yeah, it just pushes it down to that idea that if you're doing your modern rollout, it should be to a pilot group. So you've got time to identify if things need to be locked down. It's just something that I don't know.
So a good way to respond to somebody if they ever say, why doesn't Azure AD support OUs and things like that? The way that you can respond to that with 100% success each time is, I've seen your AD environment. You have got no right to ask a question like that. Because you know that everyone who manages an AD environment is going to feel very guilty when you say that.
Exactly.
But there's a positive. There's a positive.
I don't even look at customers' group policies. I flat out refuse to look at them. If you're wanting to go and do the line by line, more than welcome to, Mr. Customer. Let me provide you the Excel spreadsheet if you want to do a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the group policy analyzer in Intune. But my job is not to sit there and go line by line and explain to you why that setting is not working.
Now, I do want to call out a positive in the screenshot here. If you take a look at the, obviously you can sort of see that someone just sort of set this up as a quick and dirty one. I was trying to find a screenshot of one that had obviously started off as Small Business Server 2000 and still had all the SBS policies floating around in it. But I tried to find that one, but I couldn't find it. But I thought XP was a good option, and that is just something where you like. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with people's AD environments at all these days, but that would always be the moment where your heart would sink through the floor and you'd go, I just don't want to be here because nobody has ever done anything here that is going to be good for what we're about to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was previously internal IT going into a new environment to set up a new base image, because that's typically how I was brought into an organization. We're going to a new version of Windows. You need to come in and set it up. One of the first things that I would do is go, give me a new OU, I'm blocking inheritance. I don't care what you've done previously. And it's the same mentality that we're looking at with Intune, and then you bring across settings that you are actually applying.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're going to be carrying the baggage for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to be the last point of contact for those things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you changed that policy. It's like, no, I completely avoided that policy, but thank you for contacting me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that like advanced group policy management didn't become a mainstream for most organizations, where you had to check in and check out policies, while it is frustrating and clunky, that feature alone was worth the MDOP subscription.
Yeah, I've got a question. Is AppV still supported? I'm not joking. It's a serious question. And because I had to answer it the other day, and I said, I think it is, but don't expect much from it right now.
Mm.
I believe it is, so long as it's published via config manager. AppV server via MDOP definitely isn't. But I believe if you publish it via server, and I'm going to put the caveat there, I haven't researched this in the last couple of years, so it may be not the case anymore, but AppV via config manager was still supported, with my understanding.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, basically, and I guess like some of the early conversations around MSIX, et cetera, were to sort of give, some of that same degree of containerization, et cetera. I just haven't paid that much attention to MSIX yet to really, track how that's going. I guess I'll have to at some point, but yeah, I just haven't needed to yet.
Sure you will.
Yeah. When I least expect it, someone's going to drop it on me.
Yep.
Yep.
I'd be interested. How many people are using MSIX today? Show of hands, comments in the chat.
It's a pretty big thing in the WVD space. Just doing like MSIX app attach.
Yep.
It's also something that we are investigating at Patron PC for sort of inclusion of MSIX products as a deployable thing, because they're super easy to detect and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
I did some experimentation with it a couple of years ago, and it's very familiar experience to sort of the AppV sequencer process. So it seemed quite friendly. We just didn't have a use case for it really, but it did seem to work fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Okay, so seeing that group policy was one of the ones that was nominated, did anyone have any particular questions that they wanted to ask around overcoming any particular issues? Now, not necessarily a granular policy that you're trying to replicate via Intune or anything like that.
No stump the chump.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think the answer that will be given is apply a registry setting.
Yeah. Let me Google that for you.
Yeah. So I guess just if anyone does have anything in particular, or is it something that now, I guess, the people are actually getting better at letting go of what they've got in their policies as they move to the cloud and saying it's our opportunity to rebuild and do it properly, as opposed to replicate things that are working but not things we really want to continue forward with.
I think you'll find there's two camps there. The ones that can get on board with that have a very successful migration to modern management. The other ones end up doing co-management.
Yep. And hybrid.
Yeah.
Don't do hybrid autopilot, please.
Adam's not on the call, so we can call him out.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing there is that, and obviously this is not a shot at Adam, but the
Hi, Adam.
No, but in I'm sure that even in your role, Stephen, you probably still have to deal with people who want to try to keep the things in place that reflect the skill set they already have. That's
Yeah.
the polite way that I put it.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. So part of it is also government regulations, interestingly. So this is where you look at the like ACSC, ISM, where you sit there and go, well, these are the configurations that need to be defined on your device. And it's a matter of working through that and going, all right, well, why are you doing this compared to this? And having that conversation. So they're the ones that you'll typically see, the heavily regulated, heavily protected environments that need to make sure that they have that level of security, where you have that deep conversation. Otherwise, most organizations are really happy to not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I guess if enough time has passed, the people who built their careers on knowing AD and group policy are probably in different roles. And you'd have new people coming into it going, what the hell have I gotten myself into and how do I get out of it? So moving to something new would actually be a good, that would be their opportunity for the next 20 years of things that they're good at.
Exactly.
Because that's the thing here is like when we're talking about group policy, it is in terms of release, like this is it's allowed to drink in the US now. That's how old it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's jump back then. So what haven't we covered? We haven't covered app deployment or network changes. So do either of these have things? Now, I don't want to throw app deployment on Ben, because I know Ben would be more than happy to talk about it for extended time periods.
Ben knows
but I guess
about app deployment.
No,
Sorry?
I know nothing about app deployment.
No. It's Daniel apps deploy. Daniel
Yeah.
apps deployment. Yeah.
Oh, that was funny.
Good luck.
We're recording, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Dan.
Okay. Well, let's do app deployment last, because I think that's potentially one where there could be a bunch of extra content. So let's just do network changes quickly, because we've already touched on a couple of the things in here. So I guess for me, the question that I've always got is if people are always, basically still forcing a lot of traffic back through their internal network, whether it's like always on VPN or like anything else like that. And they're not using split tunnel. What is it that people are trying to achieve when they just force a bunch of stuff through their VPN connections?
To see how quickly it can break down when it goes into a COVID situation.
Yeah.
Thinking they know better than other people.
Well, they got their wish. They got to stress test it in a way that they weren't expecting.
Oh yeah, and that stress test didn't work out well for a lot of companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I mean, I remember having to fight this battle 3 years ago, trying to explain that split tunnel VPNs as an always on service it was just the replacement for DA.
Yeah.
And I basically got stonewalled until COVID hit, and then all of a sudden everyone needs a solution to handle always on VPNs, and they also need access to the internet externally. How do we do this?
Yeah.
If only there was a solution.
Yeah. Now, a question for other people on the call. Outside of Microsoft, how often did you ever encounter direct access in the wild? Now, I know a few partner organizations that have used it because basically it was free as part of their MPN licensing.
Extensively in the customers I used to deal with.
Oh, okay.
I know quite a lot of orgs that were running it. Like every third customer I went to, we were running direct access.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me with DA, it's one of those things where it's like, if it wasn't just in Win 10 or in Windows Enterprise, if it was in Pro and it was like made easily available to the SMB market, Microsoft would have done that.
On more than just Windows?
Windows, yeah. But even if you sort of go back to, let's say, like so I think DA was introduced with Vista. So even if you went back to that time frame where Windows was still pretty, was absolutely the dominant OS, it would have been like, it could have been something where Microsoft could have like absolutely like consumed market share in that lower end space with that kind of capability. But I think though, for the first few versions, there was still a bit too much like infrastructure required. That would, so things like, I think, you need to have your own, cert server, et cetera, which I think would still have been a bit of, I'm trying to think of how many small partners that serviced smaller customers would have really had the skills to do that properly.
The minimum implementation, even to this day, is 3 servers, because you have to have a certificate server, you need to have an NPS server, and you need to have a front end DA server.
So it would have made it
throw in your
into
domain controller.
Yeah. So it would have made it into mid-market at best. Yeah, it scaled down to mid-market at best,
Yeah. So, like, for how easy it was to set up, fantastic. How easy it was to troubleshoot, terrible.
But when it worked,
everybody knows
when it worked, it was a thing of joy.
Right? Doing the translate from IPv4 to IPv6, oof, that was tough.
Yeah.
And then even the fact that it didn't really handle going across to non-Microsoft servers on the back end was not a great experience either. So, but direct access was fantastic for its time.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I would expect most customers to be running today.
Oh no, well, mobile devices kind of.
Well, yeah, but the question I put to you, Mark, there is how many customers actually need to have a VPN for their client computer? Sorry, for phones. What are they connecting to?
They probably still would have had the pitch from their network equipment provider saying, DA means that you still got to have our stuff anyway, so you might as well move completely over to our side. That was what I saw most of the time, was people were interested in it, but whoever was responsible for the network infrastructure won versus the Windows team, the Windows internal people.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we probably don't have too much more to add on that one. So let's just jump into the app deployment piece. And I guess because we sort of covered that one fairly often, we don't need to get Ben involved and talking for 2 or 3 hours on it. Now, notice here, I went through and it's like, what can I show for app deployment? It's like, what's more fun than repackaging applications into an MSI? It's doing it with Orca. Yes.
Hang on, Mark. It should have been Wise Installer if you want to go legacy.
Oh God. No, I think I used to going back to NT4 TSC. I think I had to use the Wise Installer to go through and package things up as MSIs to install there. They're the kind of horrible memories I have of things.
Yep.
Or when you can't find the Orca installation, so you just get Super Orca, the third-party tool that basically does the same thing.
Yeah. And all you really wanted to do at the time was crack open the Chromium-based Edge installer so you could tell it not to put an icon on your desktop.
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much.
That's yeah.
Or,
I know
like WinRAR to remove the requirement to have Chrome installed as part of it, so you get the silently installable version. Not that I ever did that.
just use 7-zip. It's
7 what?
7-zip.
7
9
what?
zip.
Zerp.
Yeah, that's better.
Though I think there's like an 8-zip or a 10-zip on
9 zip.
on the Microsoft Store.
Yeah, it's 9 zip.
Gold. Yeah, look, do we have app deployment questions? Does someone else want to do it?
So should I repackage everything as an MSI/MSIX?
I mean, MSIX rule. If you want to do that, go for it. It means the installs will be faster. Detection will be easier. And if it's an MSIX, it's going to show up in the software inventory in Intune, I believe.
Yeah, I guess it's like I'm just sort of looking at Andy's question, like on MSIX, is it it's just not that widely used.
No, it's massive.
It's
so for
WVD, it's basically forcing. I don't like using the word force. It's highly encouraged to use it in WVD environments, but I think it's like in terms of why don't we really see it that much in terms of the apps or whatever that we're using? It's just that usual thing where the market just moves way slower, and if there's a bunch of other options available in Windows to install things, people aren't going to move over to a new technology until a customer that's large enough says, if you don't do this, then we'll go with vendor X who's doing that same thing. So that usual, not an empty threat one where they are actually at risk of losing that customer, so it's worth putting the investment in.
We'll help pay for the development to do MSIX.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one of those things where I think the same way that even if you take a look at MSI, it took forever for things outside of the older versions of Office to have like to be MSI based. So even like I'm sure if you went back and looked at the trajectory of how long did it take for MSI to become a fairly mainstream installer, like that was definitely not an overnight success. So I'd say that
is when I'd classify MSI was the standard. Before that, you were still getting hardware vendors delivering executables that had like these /1/2 switches and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that means it took roughly 10 years.
Yeah.
Because it was Server 2000 where you could start pushing MSIs out via group policy targeting. So basically 10 years for it to sort of become that thing. And even for me, I think the thing that sort of really made me start trying to sort of figure out what is available as an MSI was when with Intune you couldn't deploy unless you wanted to do your own thing, you had to use that single MSI versus an XE. So that was where all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's actually a hell of a lot more available as an MSI than I realized there was.
Yes.
Okay. So then so I guess then in terms of, just to sort of answer or to address some of the questions, or just like people who are curious about MSIX. Does anyone know if there's like good content on that I guess like Docs would obviously have some good stuff, but maybe like Microsoft Learn might have some guided content or something like that as well.
I believe so. Again, I mean, really harping on the point that MSIX is huge in the WVD space. There's lots and lots of guides and documentation on the best way to do app attach and stuff with MSIX. But when I was investigating it as a thing internally, I did find a lot of documentation. I'll see if I can find it now. But it's I can't remember who was saying it, but it's if you've played around with AppV before, the idea of staging, having a staging machine with very little on it, and then just basically monitoring for changes is kind of what it does.
In terms of migrations from Config Manager, we're in a position where we're running co-management at the moment with workloads predominantly in Intune, but at deployment, one has always been a bit of a challenge, and just I think a lot to do with the number and complexity of some of the deployments we've got. So do you see that often? Is it something we missed a trick in terms of getting those migrated to Intune?
No, it's as complicated as it was with Config Manager.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the only sort of kink in it is that instead of having a UI to click buttons on, you kind of need to know how to do it through through an API. If you want to be really good at it, and sort of automate that process.
The simple story today is, it's if you've got your config manager app sitting there with deployment types, with install strings and all of that, and detection methods, which most people do, you can grab those fields and grab the files that are sitting in your package cache, or whatever you want to call it, source folder, and then create the Intune win file and send it up. So you can do that manually and go through that process. It's a little bit time consuming, we understand. There are people that have started creating scripts for that.
Are you pointing at yourself there, Steve?
I don't have anything public on that.
No. Steve and I were playing around with this years ago.
Yeah, we had a look at this, 12, 14 months ago, had something actually sort of working.
Yeah, I think the only thing that wasn't working was if you had a scenario where you had multiple deployment types, we just was just like, whatever, I don't care.
So there's a guy out of the UK, Ben, another Ben, who's got something. Yeah, Ben Whitmore has something around that. So he has a solution that allows you to basically extract the data out of Config Manager and push it across, but it's got a lot of assumptions associated with that. So that's a matter of just sitting there and coordinating. And there's always going to be the edge cases that you'll need to work through. But also use it as a process and a time to update where possible and change your versions.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So on regards to the sequencing ordering, this is where you can do dependencies, but also ask the question of, well, what are you looking for in that scenario?
If you've got, all right, so Jason, here's so a reason to not use dependencies, and then a reason or a workaround to that solution. So dependencies are cool because in theory, I can say that before I install 7-zip, I need to have Chrome on my computer. So I make Chrome a dependency of 7-zip, and then Chrome will always install before 7-zip. The problem with this is that once you set up the dependencies, if you then decide that you want to update the version of 7-zip and you create a new version and you want to delete that old version, you can't delete it because there's a dependency linked there. And then if you start getting all really, really complicated and you've got multi-app dependencies, there's no real nice way to follow the chain of what is dependent on what. And then you just end up with a bunch of things you can't delete because you don't remember what you did. That's the simplest way to sort of get anyone away from that idea. The second one that I was going to talk about is if you have a specific bunch of applications that need to be installed in a specific sequence so that they work, then those things are prereqs. And what you should be doing is you should be combining them all into one meta package with an installs wrapper and staging them yourself. It's a little bit more work, but if these applications rely on a specific order of deployment and installation, then you probably should just make the package yourself. Am I a bit too blunt with that? That's the best way to sort of handle this sort of stuff.
No, thanks for that. I mean, that's really where I come from, it's just a lot of people ask, especially around autopilot,
Yeah.
of basically trying to recreate OSD.
Oh yeah, everyone
with
wants task
autopilot
sequencing in
app.
Intune. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know where it's coming from. And everyone sort of seems to think that enrollment status page was going to be the magic bullet that gave them what they want. It's not. So yeah, look, I mean, at the moment, there's physically no way. If you sit and you watch enough deployments, the policies come down at complete random. So if you and I can't
if they come down.
if they come on now, it's an amazing
yeah.
solution that works all the time. Yeah, at the end of the day, if you have a scenario where things need to come down in a very specific order, you have two options: is rely on dependencies, which has its own problems, or just do it yourself because you know the requirements better than a tool that doesn't really provide that functionality for you. And I'm going to mute because there's a blender on.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so anything else then that around app deployment that anyone wanted to cover off?
Is anyone still having issues with the concept of the Intune Win app packaging? Just as like a thing?
We'll take that deafening silence as a no.
As a no.
Yeah,
as a strong no.
I like
Yeah.
it.
See, you've done a good job, Ben. You fixed
Awesome.
it for everyone.
I fixed it for everyone. That's great.
Yeah.
Has anyone played with supersedence yet?
No, I know you have.
A little bit. It's limited in that. I don't know why you would have this, but you currently there's a limit of 10 layers of supersedence. If you're in a scenario where you had 10 different levels of supersedence on a package, I'd be concerned.
Levels of contrivance.
Yeah, exactly. But it's it's good if you need to do a rollback. That's currently the best way to do it. Have your dodgy version of Chrome still out there. Set up a new the fix with a decent detection method, and then set a supersedence. It's currently the only way to sort of force an application to uninstall, whereas dependencies don't do that. So supersedence allows you to force an uninstall of that application, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, then what we might do is stop the recording. But before I do that, I'd like to thank everyone for jumping in. Now, just because we're stopping the recording doesn't mean that we'll necessarily jump off. We know that sometimes people have got some questions that they don't really want on a recorded session for a variety of reasons. So we'll stay online for a bit. If you do have any other things that you want to run through, etc., maybe you just think they're a little bit too out of scope for some of the other things we've been covering. But I'll stop the recording now so that if you do have anything else you want to jump in with, definitely do that. If you want to wait until, let me just stop the recording now. So now we can just